Hello, welcome to the Peaceful Wood Turner. This is a piece of root from a shrub that a neighbor took out of their yard, and I saw it in the trash and I said, that's got some interesting stuff going on. And when I cut it open, I was even more excited because I saw the colors and everything that are inside it. So I know it's some kind of evergreen type shrub, but beyond that I really couldn't tell you what it was. There's a little bit of a language barrier with my neighbor. They were surprised I even was looking at the stuff in their trash. But hey, you know, when you want to find interesting wood, you got to look where it's going to be. So I've trimmed off a bunch of big pieces, and I'm still going to have to trim off a little bit more before I start actually getting it on the lathe and turning it. I've got a little bit of rough right up here, as you can see. Down here, I've got some corners and stuff, pieces sticking out. I really don't want to cut those on the lathe anyway. So I'm going to take a couple of saws to them and smooth this down a little bit, and then I'll start rounding this off. I didn't show you all the parts of that. I didn't show you any of the parts of that really. Here's some of the pieces that got cut off. I ended up using a chisel even to take some of the pieces off on the side here, where it was just kind of split and sticking out and really hard to get to with anything because of the way everything curved around and stuff. So anyway, I've cut this down and I made it into two different pieces, and the reason for that is just it was pretty long, and I'm not really good at hollowing anything that's that long at this point, and I think I kind of want to hollow these out a little bit and make a couple of vessels out of them. So I'm going to start with the bigger one, and I'm going to mount it up first as a faceplate just to get started and round it off and everything else, and that way I can also make sure that's really secure on the lathe. It's a pretty dense piece of wood. Seems to be pretty dry, but either way it's got a lot of weight to it, and I want to make sure it's really secure. So I'm going to get it mounted up with the faceplate, and then I'll get it spinning. I've got it on the lathe, and I'm going to be going at a relatively low speed. This piece is still a little out of balance, so I'm getting a lot of vibration and stuff. And I'm going to be really careful with it. I really want to take my time with it, do it right, and watch out for all these spots that I could catch. One of the things that I have a problem with is, as I'm working, I want to go in further than I should. And I especially do that when there's an empty space like this down here. I'll start working in, and then I'll come over and I'll immediately catch. So I tend to keep an eye out for where my high spots are, and I try to work with those areas first. It keeps me out of trouble a little bit. I'm going to lower my tool rest just a little. And I'm going to be going with my spindle gouge, just figuring fewer shoulders, hopefully means fewer catches. I don't think the purple's going to stay, even though it's lovely, but I really like how the grain is all twisted and figured and everything else. And I've got this down to the point now that there's pretty much just wood here. There's no bark or anything else. So I'm going to take a couple smoothing passes and I'm going to work on the end here so that I can turn this around, put it on my chuck. I'm liking this tapered shape, so I'm going to keep this shape, just adjust it a little bit, and then flip it around. Switched up for a new angle so that you can see a little bit better as I work my way in here, because I'm starting to get my shoulder into the shot. I'm just hollowing this out now so that I can mortise it to put my chuck on. Angle change again. Switch it around. I switched it around. It's on the chuck, and as you can see, there's some unevenness here. You can see that this is coming in and out a bit, even at this bad camera angle. And what I did is I took the parting tool and I just kind of marked it so that it'll be easier for me to see as I'm working. And I'm going to work on coming around here and just kind of taking it down. Usually what I've done is I've put my tool rest over here and I've worked on just smoothing it out bit by bit. I'm figuring that that may not be the best way for me to do it, to be able to keep track of where I need to be. So I figured I'd try this, just put the mark here, and that gives me a little bit of a line to follow. So I'm going to bring my tool rest around the corner, just so I can kind of come around with it and work on either side as need be. And I'm going to work with my bowl gouge. So with all the curl and figure on the top of this, I really would love to make this into something like an urn, but it's not going to keep the color, and it's still a little greener than I would like to have for something like an urn, because the wood's going to shift a little bit, and if I tried to make a lid for this out of the same material or even out of a different material, everything would not fit after a little while. So I feel like I'm kind of losing a little something here, but I think in the end this is going to work out really nicely. I'm going to take my parting tool and just kind of come across here, take off the last of this so that I can start hollowing. So the memory card filled up, so I skipped over the last little bit of taking off the end here. What I'm going to do now is just start hollowing, working from the inside out. And I'm going at about 1,000 RPM. So cool looking. Coming along nicely. Never really noticed before, but it seems like as I go in, I have the flute one way. I have to kind of rock it and change it as I go around because I'm cutting here, cutting here, cutting these different spots, and I have to have a different angle as I go around. I couldn't even explain to you exactly what the angles are that I'm doing. I'm just realizing that I just have to kind of keep adjusting. I am going to switch my tool rest now. Got my stainless steel tool rest in here now. This should work a little bit better for me, and it's got a little bit more clearance underneath here, so should do well. And keep going. I switched my tool rest around here a little bit so that I can be a little bit more stable as I work inside. So I've gotten pretty deep in there right now. I'm getting deep enough that I'm having a little bit of trouble with the bowl gouge. So I'm going to switch over and start using the scraper. And hopefully that'll do pretty well. I won't get quite so many catches that way, because I really felt like I was getting close to doing a lot of catches with the bowl gouge. So I'm going to use the scraper for the last little bit. I only have about a ½ inch left to go. So I think I'm where I need to be on the inside. I'm just going to dress the outside a little bit and then do some sanding. And pretty close to done. Alright, just going to come around the edge here a little bit and just take some off on the side here, try to take some of the tool marks off and just kind of dress it a little bit. Alright, I'm going to sand a bit. I'm going to start with 150 grit sandpaper. I'm going to do the same thing on the inside and the outside, so I'm not going to switch back and forth on the views. So before I go to any finer grits, I'm just going to put on some mineral oil, help raise the grain a little bit, and let me get a slightly smoother finish. Wow! All I can say on that one is, well, you heard me. If that keeps even half this color, I will be so excited. And no matter what, I am really glad I have a few more pieces of this root, because this is really pretty. It's got lots and lots of figure and just really amazing. Alright, now for a higher grit. Alright, got my 1200 grit wet dry. All right, I'm gonna go to the fine finish pad. Well, that looks amazing. Probably gonna take a couple more coats of finish on it and a little bit of time just to make sure the wood is completely settled. But wow, thank you for joining me on the Peaceful Wood Turner.